And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at a civilization building game, kind of. It's more of a Suburbia building game, and that game is, of course, Suburbia by Ted Alspach and Bezier Games. Now, this is a game where each player has their own little area, their own Suburbia, you might say, on which they're trying to build different types of buildings in order to increase their income, increase their reputation, and ultimately increase their population, which will be victory points at the end of the game. In this game, you're going to be buying tiles and placing them in your own area in hopes of doing those three different things, and whoever does so in the best manner will be the winner. Before I get into it too much, why don't we just check out what you're going to get in the box and how the game plays, and then at the end we'll come back here and we'll get my final opinions of it. So here you can see Suburbia all set up. Now I've set it up for 2 players just because the number of players isn't going to matter for the example, and I'm only going to show you one of those players in the example. He's down here closest to the camera. What we're looking at here is basically a market up here, an individual player's area here, and then the scoreboard, which I'll likely move off to the side during the explanation. Up here in the market, you can see there are several different piles of tiles, an A, a B, and a C. The A tile is currently filling the market, and it's going to have the earlier, easier tiles to do and the little bit less complicated tiles. That will change, of course, when you get into B. They're going to get a little bit more complex and a little bit better. And the same is true of C, which also has a tile towards the very end, which is going to dictate when the game ends. It's called the one more round tile, and it looks like this. When this tile comes up, you'll finish the current round, play one more round, and then whoever has the most points will win after you score the goals. Now, goals. There are 2 goals out here currently because it's a 2-player game, but there are many, many more of these goals. You choose them randomly at the start of the game, and they'll change how you're going to vie for victory points at the end of the game. So this one here says that if you have the fewest industrial buildings, yellow, you're going to get 15 population victory points at the end of the game. Whichever player manages to do that will get that one. This one here wants you to have the most contiguous gray buildings. Gray buildings are kind of like parks or community buildings, like maybe law offices or stuff like that. So whoever has the most contiguous gray buildings at the end of the game will get 15 population. In addition, you'll see that there are some tiles here on the center area. These tiles are going to be basic buildings that you can buy if you don't want to buy any of these to add to your area. And they're always the same. You can always count on them. If it's something you need, you can go ahead and buy it and add it to your area. Additionally, you'll see there's an area for money over here. It's all supposed to fit on this triangle. I don't know how. I just kind of have it smeared all over the place here, but it's supposed to fit there. It's the bank. It just holds your money. Now, these tiles that we have laid out in the market here are going to be tiles that are available for purchase. The cost for them is going to be the cost printed above the tile plus the cost printed on the tile. So, for example, this landfill will cost you 4 plus 0, while as the municipal airport all the way down at this end will cost you 6 plus 10. So the further they are down this track, the more they're going to cost, but you always have to pay the base cost on the tile. So here we have a landfill and a business supply store, some mobile home communities and a homeowners association, a mint, a building office, or an office building, and a municipal airport. And each of these does different things when you buy them. Now, the goal of this game is to increase the population of your own personal suburbia. And you're going to do this by building different things into your town, which are going to be these tiles here. As you build things, you're going to adjust your income and your reputation. Hopefully, they'll go up, although you may have a goal saying you want them to go down. Each player will start the game with 2 goals. In this case, it's the most lakes. It's just plus 20 population if you manage to do so. You're the aquatic engineer. And the fewest gray buildings, which doesn't really mesh up very well with this one up here, the most contiguous gray buildings. So, not great. But you can decide which one of these 2 to keep. So maybe I'll keep the most lakes because this one doesn't mesh up with one of the public goals, and that'll be discarded from the game. And each player will do this. Now, you'll see you start the game with 0 income and 1 reputation. Income will be how much money you get after you take your turn. So if you're up on income, you'll get more money. If you're down on income, of course, you'll lose money. Reputation is how much population you're going to gain at a specific point in your turn. So if you're up on reputation, you will gain population. And if you're down on reputation, if you're in the negatives, you'll lose population. Of course, not good because you're trying to get victory points. So each time you gain population, you'll move up on this track. And you'll see that the track has numbers. Each player starts with 2 population, and it has these red lines. This is where kind of the pacing of the game is going to come in. When you cross these red lines, if you get too much population too fast, each time you cross it, you're going to lose 1 income and 1 reputation. You're growing fast, things are bad in your city a little bit. I mean, of course you want to grow, but the more you grow, the more problems you have. You lose a little bit of income and you lose a little bit of reputation. And if you go too fast, you're going to lose all of your income and reputation. You'll see these lines get closer and closer together the further you get up. So you kind of want to pace yourself with getting victory points, but of course outpace your opponent. On your turn, you're going to follow several steps. And of course, one player will be the start player. They have this building. But on your turn, you're going to go through a couple of steps. And the first step is that you're going to buy a building to add to your area. And you kind of have to get a new building each round. So, as I said, you have your option of buying these buildings, or you can buy the basic ones from the center, or you can do what's called buying a lake. And I'll show you that quickly. But each building is going to have a different benefit or a different interaction with your own and the other player's area. So, for example, let's take a look at the landfill here. In order to buy this, you would have to pay $4 plus the 0 from the market in order to place it in your area. When you do so, you would gain 2 income by placing it. And in addition, you're going to lose 1 reputation for each adjacent yellow, gray, green, or blue building. So if I were to buy this and place it right here, for example, I would pay my 4 money to the bank, of course, and I would have to go up 2 income, but I'm going to lose reputation for each adjacent building that is gray, yellow, or green. So that's 2. So I'm going to go down 2 reputation. Not the greatest thing, but then after that I'm going to collect or pay money based on my income. So I would get 2 money. After that, I'm going to adjust my reputation by whatever my population by whatever my reputation is. So I would lose a reputation. This may not be the best first move in the game. So let's adjust things back. Everything goes back the way it was, and now we're back. But the next building here, we have the business supply office. If I were to buy this one, it would cost me $8 plus 0, so $8 straight up. I would gain 1 income by placing it in my area, and I would get plus 1 for every office tile. This is not adjacent office tiles. This is not even office tiles in my own area, and it's not static when I place the tile. That means that when I place this, although I may not get a benefit for it, every time somebody buys an office tile, meaning it has this briefcase on it, and places it in their area, I'm going to get plus 1 income. So I could buy this and kind of bank on that for the rest of the game. Alternatively, I could take a look at the mobile community home. This one here just gives me 6 population when I buy it and place it in my area, but may have interactions with other things. For example, if I were to place it here, I can see that I'd get plus 1 to my reputation for placing a green tile next to it. And that's a static thing here, but I would lose minus 1 reputation for each adjacent green there. So it really would balance out, whereas if I were to play it down here, I would get the plus 1 reputation and avoid the minus 1. So placement is going to be key. Of course, when you place a tile, you have to place it adjacent to something already in your area. So you're going to be placing these tiles out, trying to maximize your placement on the board to get the most reputation and income, but at the same time pace yourself and play off of what other players have in their area in order to kind of balance that. Now, all this while, you want to pay attention to your goal. And for example, my goal is that I want to have the most lakes. You don't see any lakes out here. Well, that's because lakes are actually the reverse side of any tile. For example, this one is blue on the other side, and all tiles are blue on the other side. Instead of buying any of these tiles out here, you could just pay the cost printed above the tile and not the cost on the tile and flip that tile over to get a lake. When you place a lake in your area, it's going to give you $2 for each adjacent building, essentially, except for other lakes. So this is a way to kind of recover some money if you're a little bit low. As another alternative, you could buy one of the basic buildings, and they have costs printed on them and do not have a market cost associated with them. When you buy one of these, you're going to place it into your own area. Then you must discard a card or a tile from this area by paying the cost above it. So you can buy one of these in order to avoid the cost of these tiles, or buying one of them if you don't like it, but you must discard a card from the area. It could cost 0, it could cost up to 10, depending on what you want to kind of void out from that area. Either way, after you have bought and placed your tile and adjusted your income, received your income, and adjusted your population accordingly, either up or down based on what your reputation is. Currently, we'll say I'm plus 2 because I placed this tile and gained a reputation. And I also gained 6 victory points, so we're up to 10 for purple. We would go ahead and we would move on with the next phases of the turn, which is going to be essentially adjusting this market down and replacing a new tile out here for the player. So you're going to see everything shifts down and new tiles will come out. Now you need to pay attention to these tiles pretty closely in order to accomplish your goals and in order to, of course, score victory points throughout the game. So you want to, if you're going for office buildings, you'll want to pay attention to where they are and try and get them out onto the board. Maybe you have to build them, maybe your opponent will build them for you. But there's an office building here. So if you built this, you're going to want to pay attention to this office building out here in order to get a little bit of extra income. Alternatively, you can pay attention. Some of the goals will be like to have the worst reputation. Maybe you want to drive your reputation down. Now, you don't want to do that too early because you want to score victory points by getting your population up throughout the game. But maybe late in the game, you're going to want to try and find ways to drive your population down by buying landfills. The landfill, you can place it next to a bunch of buildings and drive your reputation back down. You may lose a few victory points, but it could be worth the 15 or 20 victory point payoff at the end of the game. As the game goes on, players will buy tiles, add them to their area, score population or increase their population, increase, decrease, or whatever their reputations and incomes, and eventually you'll come on to phase B, which is when the pile of A runs out. When A runs out, you move on to B, and you'll just get some different tiles. Sometimes they'll be better in terms of the amount of population they grant you. Some of them will have different interactions. So, for example, this green tile now gives you -1 reputation for each adjacent blue building. Or we have an elementary school here, which is +1 reputation and +1 population for each of your own residential buildings. So the building kind of grouping will change a little bit as the game goes on. In Group C, again, you'll see the same type of thing. So now we have apartments, which are +5 population and +2 population for each adjacent blue building. Or you have the university here, which is +2 income and +1 for every school that is on the board anywhere, but costs quite a bit of money. So you'll go on buying tiles and adding them to your area, sometimes having to pick up a lake or something in order to get some money in order to replenish, but essentially trying to improve your own area in order to go towards these goals. You'll keep doing this until you hit that one more round tile that I showed you earlier, which is somewhere in the last several tiles of the game. In a 2-player game, you shuffle it into the last 6 and then add 4 more underneath that in order to continue on. But essentially, once this comes up, you'll continue the current round, and you'll go on through that round, play another round, and then at the end of the game, you'll score points. Now, at the end of the game, your points are going to be your population plus population you're going to gain from different goals. So, whoever had the fewest of these industrial buildings is going to gain 15 population. Whoever had the most contiguous of these gray buildings will gain 15 population. And then if you manage to accomplish your own goal, you will, of course, get those points as well. On top of that, you're going to convert your remaining money into population at $5 for 1 population, and then keep your money as a tiebreaker after that. But essentially, whoever best builds up their area and gains population throughout the game, gains population from goals that they accomplish by the end of the game, and has leftover money to increase that population even further, will be the winner. And there you have it. That is Suburbia by Ted Alspach. Now, this is one of my favorite city building games because of its simplicity that actually, because of some of the different effects of the tiles, ends up being more complex than you think it would. It's a very simple game to play. You buy a tile, you place it in your area, and you do the effects. But the interactions that you see from these different tiles, because you have to maintain them throughout the game, makes the game a little bit harder to follow than you would think. But that complexity makes the game more interesting. So you have to follow who's buying office buildings. Do I want to place an office building if it's going to benefit somebody else? Do I want to maintain my reputation high and gain gain population, but kind of if I overpace my population, I'll lose income, and maybe I need that income for something else. Is it beneficial for me to add this tile knowing that I could use a different tile in order to hopefully get victory points based on one of the goals. But this provides me population immediately. What do you want to do and how are you going to do it is very important in this game. There's a lot of choice. The goals vary and there's a ton of them. I only showed you 2 or 3, but there's probably 30 different goals in the game that you can select from or choose randomly in order to change up how each player is going to play from time to time. So with that said, the game has a lot of variety, a lot of variability, and a lot of choices to be made, and I think it's one that's going to interest players who like city-type building games but aren't looking for something with civilization added into it, or looking for something with a board with lots of moving pieces. This one takes the simplicity, adds a little bit of complexity and tile variation, and makes it very fun to play. So if that sounds good to you, check it out. That is Suburbia from Bezier Games and Ted Alspach.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.